Peace, love, and light to the family. Ordained Metaphysical Minister Corbin reporting live. I want to thank you for rocking with the minister. Come in, have a seat. We're about to take a field trip, another time traveling field trip. That's going to be just in a few minutes. Bear with me. We're going to do a recap. Because as you can see by the title, we are about to enter the Picean age on this presentation. In real life, we are actually packing our bags and we're about to leave the Picean age and we're about to hit the Aquarian age. Right now, there's an entanglement between the two ages. We're leaving one and prepared to step in another one. So I want to thank you. Come on in once again. Tell a friend and tell a friend. You are now in tune to the Cosmic Christ University, the home of the esoteric and metaphysical knowledge, the greatest university in our planet. If you sat back with your patience and you watched the first Astrology 101 I did about your psycho-spiritual powers, this is the same. I've been giving you the same information from the same book. Once again, if you have been watching Astrology 101 and every video after that, this is still a continuance. I'm going to read for those ones who watched the first one, the first Astrology 101. We're going to do a quick recap and to see if you remember what the author was doing with this chapter and what chapters to come after that. So then after that, we're going to get our food. I hope you guys medicated already. I'm going to be good on food until I get done with this presentation. But for you, make sure you get some food. Make sure you meditate. Get your body aligned for this presentation. And if you got to medicate, make sure you do that because we're going to have a field trip, time traveling field trip in just a few minutes. But what the minister's going to do now is do a quick recap before we go and do our field trip, time traveling thing we do. So I thank you so much. So just hold on. Get ready for the field trip. It's going to be an amazing field trip. I promise you. Hit the like button already. Hit the like button already. Tell somebody to enroll in the Cosmic Christ University. This is your work. This is your spiritual truth. This is yours to have. So I want to do a quick recap. I'm going to flash the book in your face one more time. The amazing Miss Caroline. Caroline! Amazing. The next presentation, I'm going to give you more information about this beautiful soul, Mrs. Caroline Miss, MYSS. She is still live. She's still putting the work in. So I want to do a quick recap before we take this time traveling trip. And thank you so much, family, for rocking with the minister. You know how we do. Carolyn, Mrs. Carolyn, I'm just going to call her Carolyn. Carolyn told us this when I first introduced you to Astrology 101. She said she's going to briefly look at the systems of human energy as defined by the chakras. That's what she told she was going to do, which is at the core of her beliefs about healing. She says she's going to do that, and she did that. But she also told us from there that we were going to proceed to examine the relationship between the last three astrological ages and the particular manifestations of human psycho-spiritual power that have developed in each of them. We gave you zodiacs. So now we're going to give you the Piscean age. Last video, I gave you the Aryan age or the age of Aries. That zodiac and how that brought us a tribal consciousness, survival tactics, social construction. This was all bought by a tribal consciousness. Now, a lot of us are still dealing with a tribal consciousness when it comes to our family. Some of us still cannot find that individualism within ourselves. Some of you are still seriously, vitally attached to your family where you seek your family's approval, where you cannot see yourself separate from your family. Yes, that can be a negative thing because without that self-knowing, remember, man, woman, know thyself. But if you are attached to your tribal consciousness and you're being dictated and dominated without at least knowing who you are and what you mean to you and your own worth, then yes, you are a part still of the tribal consciousness and you're still stagnant. You're still blocking your chakras. With the age of Aries, we left that. We are now in the age of Pisces, not just in the presentation, but in real life, we are packing our bags, all of us, whether you know it or not, we are packing our bags and we are leaving the Piscean age and we're preparing for the Aquarian age, the age of Aquarius. So yes, right after we do this video, the next day, the day after, we're going to get the Aquarius age information about who we are spiritually. Today, you're going to get the Picean age. Last video was the age of Aries. That's three precessional ages. That's 3 epochs. Last about 2,000 years. The last two did. Over 2,000 years. So I'm not going to tarry on too long. I told you we have a field trip. I got some water in here. Nice cold water, too. Have you ate already, folks? You can press pause, get a quick sandwich, grab some chips, meditate, make sure your chakras are lined up. It's going to be an amazing presentation. Do some breathing practices if you want to. Medicate, throw something in the air. This is going to be a great presentation. We're about to take a field trip. Now, for those who have been rocking with me for quite some times, you know I like to call myself, at least when we're time traveling, the son of Miss Frizzle. The Magic School Bus was one of my favorite animated shows back in the day. I got so many. But we're about to take a field trip. So this university is now turning into a bus. So far, we have over 480 some students and masters enrolled in the college. So this bus is pretty big. Make sure everybody is vibed out. Make sure everybody is getting prepared because we're about to go to the beginning of the Picean age. We're leaving the Picean age now in real time. So on this field trip, we're about to go to the beginning where it all started in this age. Now, how many people you know can recap a whole age like we do? Not too many. So make sure you tell people to rock with the Cosmic Christ University. You ready? All right, everybody. You're good? Everybody situated? We're good? Listen. For shizzle, my nizzle, I am the son of Mrs. Frizzle. Let's go, family. Pisces is a water sign, and water is the astrological element associated with emotion and introspection. The particular characteristics associated with the astrological age of Pisces, which began about 2,000 years ago, are emotional, consciousness, intuitive thought, and dualism. Family, I just want to make sure everybody's okay now before we really go on full throttle with this time travel machine and this field trip. Everybody, thank you so much. You ready? I'm going to go in again. I just want to make sure everybody's good. Pisces is a water sign. Shout out to all the Pisces. Pisces is a water sign, and water is the astrological element associated with emotion and introspection. The particular characteristics associated with the astrological age of Pisces, which began about 2,000 years ago, are emotional consciousness, intuitive thought, and dualism. The symbol of Pisces, 2 fish swimming in opposite directions, represent more sophisticated choices and more complicated thought processes. I'm going to stop right quick. I want to talk to my theologians and my Christian folks. To my family who, especially my Christian folks, you know how you have the fish in the back of your car? That symbol is more than just about Jesus. That symbol, for those who know, hit the like button. But I want you to do your research. You're going to learn a little bit here today about the fish symbol, which prepares you for the age of Aquarius, but the sacred knowledge behind the fish symbol as well. And major respect to all my women in the world, because that fish symbol also has a very sacred knowledge on your behalf as well. But let's keep on going. I just want to make sure I give you guys some side notes on the trip. The symbol of Pisces, 2 fish swimming in opposite directions, represent more sophisticated choices and more complicated thought processes. Remember, we left the age of Aries, and that was tribal consciousness. Everything to do with a tribal consciousness. So we have left that stage, and now we are entering the individual consciousness. The symbol of Pisces, 2 fish swimming in opposite directions, represent more sophisticated choices and more complicated thought processes. Under tribal consciousness, we just left that. Under tribal consciousness, we just left that one. individuals allowed and still allow the tribe to make important choices for them, from marriage partners to occupations. The emergence of individual choice during Pisces signaled an entirely new paradigm and with it, a new perceptual system, individual power. To manage this new individual power to manage this new individual power under Pisces, the boundaries determining an individual's emotional and mental life had to be defined with unprecedented formality. And let's bring that right back, family. To manage this new individual power, my family, under Pisces, the boundaries determining an individual emotional and mental life had to be defined with unprecedented, I don't know why I chopped that word up so much, unprecedented, there we go, formality. The global culture came to embody these same boundaries and definitions of individual and collective roles. Once again, the global culture came to embody these same boundaries and definitions of individual and collective roles. Everybody around the globe at once embraced this individual collective role. Let's keep on reading. Today, many of us see these definitions as stereotypes, but they remain as potent at the individual level as they do at the global. Some of these boundaries are summarized in the two columns below. Along the line, not too far, probably after I do the Aquarian presentation, I'm going to give you some more Carolyn Miss work. And we're going to break down a lot about who we really are. And it's going to be a beautiful breakdown. But I want to get you ready for another Caroline production as far as just healing and internal healing. And I thank Miss Caroline once again for all her work and what she does. She's a medical or intuitive medical PhD, so she can really diagnose almost what Edgar Casey did. And actually, I think about it, she can actually look at a person and diagnose them. She looks within. Same thing Edgar Casey did. Research Edgar Casey if you never heard of him, but I want to make sure I'm still focused on this presentation. It's a field trip. I'm your guide, so also going to give you some side missions, but I want to make sure we still focus on the presentation at hand. So thank you for your patience. Once again, to manage this new individual power under Pisces, the boundaries determining an individual's emotional and mental life had to be defined with unprecedented formality. The global culture came to embody these same boundaries and definitions of individual and collective roles. Today, many of us see these definitions as stereotypes, but they remain as potent at the individual level as they do at the global. Some of these boundaries are summarized in the columns below. And now, family, everybody watching, we're going to go ahead and give you these. Now, before I flash them at you, respectfully, we're going to realize that on the Western culture, I'm going to let you see that in a minute, on the Western culture, which is this, especially if you're in America, United States, Western culture, Western civilization is a male-dominated zone. Eastern civilization is a female energy dominated type of place. I'm going to say that once again because you're going to see it in a minute. I'm about to give you receipts, as y'all say. Obviously, we know this, for all the generations and histories that we have learned about America. But once again, I'm going to say this again. Where we live at in the United States of America, it is a male-driven society. In the Eastern civilization, it is a divine feminine or a female type of divine driven energy. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about now. Can you see this, family? Boom. Put it right there. I'm going to give you about... Now, for those who watch, and don't worry, everybody on the bus got a whole panorama view of it, so you ain't got to worry. Just focus on that one. You see it? You see it? I want to make sure y'all see it. You see it? I want to make sure y'all... And give you enough time, so if you want to write this down, my future teachers, you have this. All right. Let's keep on reading. During the Picean age, human evolution began the long journey out of the tribal mind and toward development of self, allowing individuals to form a separate identity while still, to some extent, remaining under tribal influences. I'm going to put this book down for a little bit, get me some quick agua. I know there's a lot of you watching, some even on the bus, who are strongly attached to your family. Now, this is not the minister saying that being attached to your family is a bad thing. No, there's a lot of growth that come with it. We learned that in the Aries presentation we did. But when you attach yourself to your family with no identity to yourself, when you dictate, when you move, when you govern your life, not based off what you decide, but what your mother may think is good for you, what your father may think for you, and their decisions about your life affect you in a negative way. In fact, you can't even move on with your day without approval from one of your family members. That's a part of a tribal consciousness that we left in the Aries precession, the Aries age, which was around Abraham's time. Abraham was, at his time, was witnessing the exit of the age of Taurus, or the Taurian age, and he was one of the founders in the Aries age. Now here we are, family. We're leaving the Aquarian age, and there was a few important people who are very important to us, whether you admit it or not, who were in the beginning of the Picean age. That's how long this age been going. So once again, before I go back into the presentation, I want you to think about that, to my people who really are stuck on their family members' approval so much that you are really sick and ill because you have no growth of your own. All your growth comes from your family members. And that can be detrimental if you let it. So I want you to think about that. I'm going to get this water. Think about that, please, family. Now let's go back in. Everybody good? Everybody on the bus good? Everybody out there watching? If you're loving what you're hearing, hit the like button. Let's keep on going. Once again, during the Picean age, human evolution began the long journey out of the tribal mind and toward development of self, allowing individuals to form a separate identity while still to some extent remaining under tribal influences. Picean culture also encouraged the growth of all the self could discover. Let's read that again. The Picean culture also encouraged the growth of all that the self could discover. My gosh, my gosh. Notably, science and medicine. This emphasis on the development of human intelligence became the leading weapon against the superstitious core of tribal perception and ultimately led to the Enlightenment and to today's secular culture. I want to read that again so we can now put a mark on the shift and when the shift happened and what caused the shift. So thank you for your patience. Let's read that again. The Picean culture also encouraged the growth of all that the self could discover, notably science and medicine. This emphasis on the development of human intelligence became the leading weapon against the superstition core of tribal perception and ultimately led to the Enlightenment and to today's secular culture. We now can place a mark on the shift of our consciousness, is what we're hearing. We now can put a mark, a timestamp, if you will, on the shift of our consciousness. Let's keep on going. Because of Picean energy, human reasoning abilities and emotional energy were given a much greater license to develop. Did everybody hear that? The wind is mighty strong outside. The setting outside, if you can see it behind me, is mighty eerie. A good setting for a great storyteller. Because of the Picean culture, because of the Picean energy, human reasoning abilities and emotional energy were given a much greater license to develop. We upgraded, family. We upgraded. Did you hear what it said? Because of the Picean energy, Human reasoning abilities and emotional energy was giving a much greater license to develop. Let me stop here right quick. Minister, where are we going at here? Listen to this. That's what the Picean age did for us, did to us. So imagine as we enter the Aquarian age, the age of information, the age of truth, the age of enlightenment, the golden age, like Trump said, the age of technology. Imagine what that's going to do to our soul. And we're going to get there soon, but we're in the Piscean age right here. Let's keep going. Western romance was also born under Pisces. From courtly love to the notion that people should be free to marry the partner they love rather than submit to marriages arranged by tribal elders. Minister, what also did the Piscean culture bring? Great question, I got you. Western romance was also born under Pisces. From courtly love to the notion that people should be free to marry the partner they love rather than submit to marriages arranged by tribal elders. Even today, however, the author says, within many tribal cultures, it is a given that the tribe will choose one's life partner. That's true today. The story of Romeo and Juliet. Okay, guys, I'm built a little bit different, so I tell people I have musical Tourette's. So certain things set me off. So it's like Romeo and Juliet. Hit the like button if you knew that song. But hit the like button if you remember the movie with one of the great actors of our time, Leonardo DiCaprio. Hit the like button if you remember. I was in middle school when that movie came out. I do believe I was in middle school. No. I was in high school watching that movie. We had VHS back then, so I don't. Somebody let me know when the movie came out on the comment section. But listen to what the author says. I was just having a flashback. But I'm gonna read that again. Western romance was also born under Pisces from courtly to love to the notion that people should be free to marry, and courtly is spelled Courtly, to the notion that people should be free to marry the partner they love rather than submit to marriages arranged by tribal elders. Even today, the author says, however, with many tribal cultures, it is a given that the tribe will choose one's life partner. The story of Romeo and Juliet became the archetypal drama of individual desire to follow their own emotional needs in contradiction to tribal and family customs. And for us, because I think Romeo and Juliet is going to be one of those stories, one of those William Shakespeare stories that last as long as this planet does. But think about that story. Romeo and Juliet wanted to love the way they wanted to love, with no restrictions, with no family all in their business. So in the Romeo and Juliet story, the author is saying, we are hearing in that story our departure from the tribal consciousness and the entrance of our individual consciousness, our choice to choose who we want to love, who we want to marry, which I think is a beautiful thing. Our paradigm shift. Our paradigm shift. Especially in these last centuries, the age of Pisces has clearly given authority over from the tribe to the mind and the heart of humanity. The history of Western culture under Pisces is symbolic of the step-by-step progress of the power of individual choice, which took perhaps its most particular leap during the Renaissance. Let's bring that back one more time. How y'all doing out there? Y'all loving this presentation? This is what we do. This is exactly what we do. Make sure you hit the like button. If you're not enrolled, then enroll. If you're enrolled, then tell a friend to tune in. Let's keep on going. The history of Western culture under Pisces is symbolic of the step-by-step progress of the power of individual choice, which took perhaps its most spectacular leap during the Renaissance, when the talents of individual artists extended far beyond the particular, and I quote, tribal schools, quote, end quote, or workshops of the masters where they learned their craft. Michelangelo, Raphael, and Leonardo. No, not the turtles, but great artists, great painters back in the days of the early Picean age. The Ninja Turtles were named after these great painters. Master Splinter told you that himself. Well, let's not go off track. This is a field trip, by the way, so let's have some fun as well. Once again, the history of Western culture under Pisces is symbolic of the step-by-step progress of the power of individual choice, which took perhaps its most spectacular leap during the Renaissance when the talents of individual artists extended far beyond the particular tribal schools or workshops of the masters where they learned their craft. Michelangelo, Raphael, and Leonardo da Vinci led the way, signaling a shift in power in which the individual artist signed his work with his own name rather than with the name of the school for which he painted, or leave it in unsigned as an act of submersion in the tribal talent pool. The self as an artist, author, or magician, or all three, was born. Look at all these amazing things that happened in the beginning of the Piscean age. So, family, imagine what's about to happen 2,000 years and some later as we enter the Golden Age, aka the Aquarian Age. This is amazing. Here we go. Eastern culture. Eastern culture is about to get good now. Here's a timestamp. Eastern culture was initiated into the new energy pattern through the birth of Gautama the Buddha. Right now, I don't care what religion you represent, I want everybody right now to just give a moment of silence of respect to the Buddha. To my church people. Oh, I love you, my church people. You know I do. To sit back and love and appreciate and live and to eat and to raise family off of the words of Jesus the Christ. His mother named him Yeshua, guys, so we gotta put respect on that. But the one you call Jesus, to have lived an abundant life that you have lived so far off of the words of Jesus, you must give respect to the Buddha. The reason being is everything that Yeshua got, the teachings he learned, at least half of them, he got from Buddha. I challenge any Christian, any theologian, any person in the congregation who only looks at one window when they know there are 4 or 5 other windows that hold truth, but you were just stuck on that window and denying and disrespecting those other windows. I challenge you. Here's a challenge to research everything that Buddha said and tell me if it doesn't line up word from word. The birth date, the way that Buddha was raised, the way that Buddha had to leave certain places lines up amazingly with the story of the one you call Jesus. I just want to put that out there. Stop thinking, stop going to these nail shops, stop going into these places, into these mom and pop stores, and think because you see a bald head, big tummy Asiatic person that's what Buddha represents. It's not. When you realize that represents in one form abundance. Just to see that old big belly bald head person there represents abundance and prosperity. But let's keep on focusing. Let's go back once again. Eastern culture was initiated into the new energy pattern through the birth of Gautama, and that's spelled Gautama, the Buddha. The Buddha was born around 500 BC. I hope you have pen and pad. You should, especially if you're on a bus. The Buddha was born around 500 BC, roughly 3/4 of the way through the age of Aries. But the growth of Buddhism took place in 3 distant periods, of which the first shares certain characteristics of Aryan energy. The first era, or I quote, turning of the wheel, end quote, in Buddhist parlance is known as Theravada. That's Theravada, Theravada, or Hinayana. That's Hinayana. Hinayana Buddhism. So I'm going to read that once again. The first era or turning of the wheel in Buddhist parlance is known as Theravada or Hinayana Buddhism and dominated the first 500 years of Buddhism. Theravada was characterized by practices of renunciation of all earthly possessions and a life of strict separation from any personal human bonding, reflecting of the fire elements of Aries in the law and order quality of that age. How dare you say that these people were just cavemen back in the day? Hell no. The strict code of behavior disciplines that made up the Theravada doctrine did not recognize emotional needs as anything more than obstacles to being in the present moment. Let's read that one again. The strict code of behavioral disciplines that made up the Theravada doctrine did not recognize emotional needs as anything more than obstacles to being in the present moment. So imagine once you get out your feelings and you get out your ego and you realize that all these things are just illusions and obstacles that you got to overcome. Let's keep on going. At the beginning of the Pisces, at the beginning of the age of Pisces, the Buddhist tradition experienced an enormous revolution. Yet again, at the beginning of the age of Pisces, the Buddhist tradition experienced an enormous revolution. We could call it a Picean revolution, giving birth to the second turning of the wheel. I'm going to ask you guys a question. What do you think the second turning of the wheel was? I'm going to give you the answer, but what do you think the second turning of the wheel was? All right. We're going to get your answer in a minute, but we're going to see if you were right in a few. I'll give you a hint. We just had Buddha. The world, the cosmos, just gave us Buddha. So who's next? Let's keep on going. At the beginning of the age of Pisces, the Buddhist tradition experienced an enormous revolution. We could call it a Picean revolution, giving birth to the second turning of the wheel, known as the Mahayana. Maha always means great. Maha Avatar Babaji, one of the great ascending masters. Maha, M-A-H-A, always mean great. I noticed that our White House uses the word Maha now. They got a little project going on. They use the word Maha. I just thought that was pretty interesting. But anyway, at the beginning of the age of Pisces, the Buddhist tradition experienced an enormous revolution. We could call it a Picean revolution, giving birth to the second turning of the wheel. Known as the Mahayana tradition, Buddhism now began to focus on compassion by developing the concept of the Bodhisattva. Some of you know that name better than I do, but the Bodhisattva. Even if I'm not pronouncing it right, you should have this word written down, and it is spelled Bodhisattva. Once again, Bodhisattva. Even if I'm not pronouncing it right, you should still know this word and research this word. The Bodhisattva. And I'm not going to keep on trying to cut that up. The enlightened individual. So it's no, well, I'm giving away too much anyway, but let's keep on reading. That word means the enlightened individual who vows not to rest until all other beings have also become enlightened. People like myself being the cosmic Christ being, me awakening to who I am. My mission now to awaken some of you. Your mission, there's some of you, like I said, we have students and masters in this university. So I have fellow ADAPs, fellow masters. Your job is to awaken the people in your sector. This is our job. This is what the age of Aquarius and us leaving the age of Pisces is about. So if you're feeling like you're the chosen one, surprise you are. But guess what? You're not the only one. There are many, many more that are awakening to their truth, to their divinity. And to you, salute. Salute. The enlightened individual who vows not to rest until all other beings have also become lightened. We just left Buddha. We're preparing you for somebody else who is about to arrive in the Picean age. Do you know who this person is? Hit the like button if you do. I'm going to read this again because guess what? It's about to be a whole nother shift. We're about to see. This is beautiful. I hope you're watching this at 35 minutes and you're loving yourself and you're having a revelation, a revelation on your revolution. This is beautiful. Let me read this again because we're about to introduce yet another spiritual being into this presentation. This is beautiful. One who you've been loving for over centuries. Even though you don't know his true story, it's okay. You're about to learn now. The ones who would have learned, you're about to learn about this person's true story. But let's read this again because this is beautiful. I'll read it one more time in its entirety, and then we're going to keep on going with no stops on that part. At the beginning of the age of Pisces, the Buddhist tradition experienced an enormous revolution. We could call it a Picean revolution, giving birth to the second turning of the wheel, known as the Mahayana tradition. Buddhism now began to focus on compassion by developing the concept of the Bodhisattva, the enlightened individual who vows not to rest until all other beings have also become enlightened. Although Theravada insisted that only ordained male monks could experience enlightenment and nirvana, Mahayana allowed the layman and woman could too. The third turning of the wheel, known as Vajrayana, and I spelled Vajaryana. Don't think because I may be pronouncing this wrong that you're not supposed to be studying and researching this. Just because I may be pronouncing this wrong, do not think that you're not supposed to be still researching this word and looking it up for your benefit. So it's spelled once again, Vajaryana. The third turning of the wheel, known as Vajrayana, or Vajrayana, you pronounce it how you want to, extended the compassionate orientation of Mahayana, adding more advanced and complex spiritual techniques in order to accelerate the enlightenment of all beings. Of all the Buddhist traditions, Mahayana is the one most widely followed in the world today. Let's read that again, my beautiful family. Of all the Buddhist tradition, Mahayana is the one most widely followed in world tradition today. I'm going to stop here because I'm getting excited because we're about to introduce somebody that you know already. What I just did is give you the predecessor to the one who you know today. This warmed my heart. I just gave you Buddha. But Buddha knew that he had a successor. His successor is the one that you go to church to, a lot of you, and you go and you only know half of his story. I would say you know about maybe 10% of his story. That's it. Yeah, I'm going to give you that lower of a percent. Because if you do the rest, this world will be a better place. People will be displaying superpowers, or what you call superpowers, psycho-spiritual powers, every day, all day. And that's where people like me is trying to get us back to. But we need we need the whole world, at least majority of us, to awaken at this time to their powers. I'm about to introduce you to the spiritual being who was here over 2,000 years ago, who took the place of Buddha. I'm about to introduce you. Let's keep on reading. Thank you for your patience. The Buddha's teaching undermined the tribal survival mentality. Once again, family, the Buddha's teachings undermined the tribal survival mentality of the Aryan age by stressing that trying to protect the ego through violence or by amassing material goods results in human suffering. Wouldn't that be amazing at 39 minutes? If everybody at once realized that violence leads to nowhere? that stressing leads to nowhere, that being depressed leads to nowhere, that hating somebody over their color or their sexual orientation leads to. Wouldn't that be amazing though? If we all can get together, what will happen after that? I can tell you. The beings from the inner world that are waiting for us to raise vibration will come out more and start teaching us more. The beings from the cosmos, the ones that you are even scared to talk about, the beings beyond Pluto, they're going to start through spiritual powers, start giving you access. See, this is what a lot of us are experiencing right now. I'm telling you things that have happened to me and that's happened to everybody else who has realized their cosmic Christ energy. The Buddha's teachings undermine the tribal survival. Remember in the last video, the last presentation, I gave you the Aries age or the Aryan age. That was a tribal consciousness. What does this title says? It says Picean, the individual consciousness. We are now in real time, right now, we are leaving that age of Picean and we are entering an even more spiritual age and advancement. What are we talking about here? You don't think the government knows this? Then I'm laughing at you if you don't think that's true. Like a big brother, like I'll still love you, but it's like a big brother laugh. Like, ha! Like Nelson. But it's still love. It's time to grow up. Spiritually grow up. This planet, the people in it, I'm saying, are far spiritually behind. It's time to grow up. The Buddha's teaching undermined the tribal survival mentality of the Aryan age by stressing that trying to protect the ego through violence or by amassing material good results in human suffering. Results in human suffering. Seeing what's going on in the world today? I'm going to tell you what's going on in the world today. You see it. Prior to the Picean age, prior to this age that we're leaving, prior to this age, humanity had not cared emotionally for others who were not blood members of the tribe. And physical survival was still the main objective. The Buddha brought humanity more refined lessons in personal development or individual power, representing the next step in human spiritual evolution. I know I keep stopping. It's going to be probably an hour. Let me see. Yep, like an hour. Oh, really? It can't be more than that. Well, darn, let me get going then. We got some. No, this can't be right. I guess we still here. Do I got to do a part 2 on this? I know not. But anyway, let's keep on going. The Buddha's teaching undermined the tribal survival mentality of the Aryan age by stressing that trying to protect the ego through violence or by amassing material goods results in human suffering. Prior to the Picean age, humanity had not cared emotionally for others who were not blood members of a tribe, and physical survival was still the main objective. The Buddha brought humanity more refined lessons in personal development or individual power, representing the next step in human spiritual evolution. Although his teaching had to wait until the second turning of the wheel at the start of the Picean age, let me repeat that again because it's about to get real now. Although his teachings, we're talking about Buddha, although his teachings had to wait until the second turning of the wheel at the start of the Picean age to achieve their most other-directed form, from the point of view of human consciousness, the development of compassion toward people who were not blood tribal members represented an expansion of the overall value of life itself. Let's keep on going. I guess we know who that person was now, and if you don't know, now you know. Family. The coming of the Christian era, hit the like button, my Christians. You better hit that like button, Christians, quit playing with me. The coming of the Christian era has been referred to as the opening of the heart of humanity. That is beautiful. That is amazing. The coming of the Christian era has been referred to as the opening of the heart of humanity. Toward that end, Jesus of Nazareth provided a new emotional vocabulary, speaking about love, brotherhood, kindness, and forgiveness, lessons of the heart that each individual must experience. That is, whether you call him Jesus, whether you know him as Yeshua, whether you're in Tibet and you know him as Saint Issa, this is amazing. Yeshua was the successor of his predecessor, Buddha. The coming of the Christian era has been referred to as the opening of the heart of humanity. Toward that end, Jesus of Nazareth provided a new emotional vocabulary, speaking about love, brotherhood, kindness, and forgiveness. Lessons of the heart that each individual must experience. The relationship Jesus had to his Father, quote unquote, in heaven introduced into Israelite culture a level of intimacy with God that had never before existed. Let me repeat that again. The relationship Jesus had to his Father, quote unquote, in heaven introduced into Israelite culture a level of intimacy with God that had never before existed. Within tribal consciousness, remember, we left that consciousness in the Aries age. Within tribal consciousness, one would not dare to address God as Father. Wow. Won't he do it? He did it. It's done. Within tribal consciousness, the consciousness that we left over 2,000 years ago, one would dare not to address God as Father, quote unquote, much less Daddy, quote unquote, as the Aramaic term Abba, Abba. Abba means father, or of course, daddy. That Jesus used could be more accurately rendered. Once again, let's read that in its entirety. Within tribal consciousness family, one would not dare to address God as father, much less daddy, as the Aramaic term Abba that Jesus used could be more accurately rendered. In assuming that God took a loving interest in every area of one's personal life, Jesus initiated the parent child relationship between humanity and heaven and gave individuals the means to establish a closer union with the divine. In time, Mary, the mother of God, became the Christian version of the divine mother goddess. Let's So yes, Christians, before Christianity, the mother goddess was always there. But since Orthodox Christianity is a male driven religion, they replaced the mother goddess energy that was so prevalent in the Eastern civilization. They dimmed that down into the mother, Mary, the mother of God, or Christ's mother. The true mother we know is Sophia the wisdom. The true mother we know is Lilith. The true mother we know is Tiamat. But let's not skid off the presentation. In time, Mary, the mother of God, became the Christian version of the divine mother goddess. We love you. The crucifixion and death of Jesus introduced two major themes of the Picean age. I will repeat myself. If this got to be over an hour, it's going to be over an hour. It has to be for you to receive your whole truth as we leave the as we leave the Piscean age, about to go into the Aquarian age. The crucifixion and death of Jesus introduced two major themes of the Piscean age: compassion for all, including those outside the tribe, and forgiveness. One of the greatest struggles of the healing process is to forgive both yourself and others and to stop expending valuable energy on past hurts. Are you one of those people who experienced that? Will you agree by hitting the like button? Do you agree to this? One of the greatest struggles of the healing process is to forgive both yourself and others and to stop expending valuable energy on past hurts. More than any other teacher, Jesus epitomized this spiritual advance. More than any teacher, listen to this. This is why Christ is so loved. This is why Yeshua is so loved. More than any other teacher, Jesus epitomized this spiritual advance through his words on the cross in behalf of the very people who were killing him. I'm a little bit hungry. Y'all already ate, right? Maybe not. Let's read that again. This is serious. It's going to have to be an hour. Over. Jesus epitomized this spiritual advance through his words on the cross in behalf of the very people who were killing him. And I quote, church people, you know this quote. Hit the like button if you know this quote. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Quote, end quote. I just want to read that again, without the quotes this time. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Yet for all the centuries that Christianity has been a part of human consciousness, we have still to master forgiveness or even reach a mild comfort level with it. We're still beefing with family members. We're still beefing with people outside of family members. You guys, listen, you guys know what I'm trying to say. I'm not going to waste energy on something you guys know that you should be focusing on. Christ said, why call me Lord, Lord, and not do the things that I asked? Hypocrites, still walking around. Yet, for all the centuries that Christianity has been a part of human consciousness, we have still to master forgiveness or even reach a mild comfort level with it. Part of the reason for our inability may be that although forgiveness makes sense to us intellectually, although, my family, hit the like button if you agree. Part of the reason for our inability may be that although forgiveness makes sense to us intellectually, it makes no sense to our emotional nature and is in conflict with our residual tribal consciousness. On one level, it seems to offend our sense of justice, as if we are saying to someone who has hurt us, and I quote, that's all right. What you did to me doesn't matter. Quote, end quote. We feel that a crime against us must be punished, or that we must be punished for our own misdeeds, bad thoughts, or negative attitudes. I want to read that again in its entirety, because this is what a lot of people do to themselves on a day-to-day basis, and then blame others for things they do to themselves. We have all been here. But you must, once you know the errors of your ways, then you must correct them. Let's read that again. Part of the reason for our inability may be that although forgiveness makes sense to us intellectually, it makes no sense to our emotional nature and is in conflict with our residual tribal consciousness. On one level, it seems to offend our sense of justice, as if we are saying to someone who has hurt us, and I quote, that's all right. What you did to me doesn't matter. Quote, end quote. We feel that a crime against us must be punished, or that we must be punished for our own misdeeds, bad thoughts, or offense. Not only have we failed to understand the meaning of forgiveness and its significance in our spiritual evolution, but we have also missed its importance to our healing. The other major theme of the age of Pisces is choice, which may well be the only true power that we have. The other major theme of the age of Pisces, my family, is choice, which may well be the only true power that we have. The choices we make throughout our lifetime are our marks of distinction in both the physical and energetic dimensions. Let me read that again. And I want to take this time to thank everybody who has been watching for 54 minutes. Don't be surprised when your spiritual powers start leveling up, because you are now taking time to take time for you, spiritual you. The other major theme of the age of Pisces is choice, which may well be the only true power that we have. The choices we make through our lifetime are our marks of distinction in both the physical and energetic dimensions. Under tribal consciousness, our power to choose is controlled by the group's procession. Didn't I have some family talk with you about family a while ago? So I shouldn't have to have this talk now, right? But we had that talk about family just earlier, right? All right then. Under tribal consciousness, our power to choose is controlled by the group's perceptions. Some of you are still being controlled by tribal consciousness. I said a lot of you today are still controlled by tribal consciousness. While this may give you a sense of security, it inhibits the development of our ability to think for ourselves. So while a tribal consciousness, having family around all the time may give you a sense of security, it inhibits the development of our ability to think for ourselves. Jesus embodied the power of choice during his lifetime, as recorded in the New Testament, challenging the tribal elders of his faith and offering the people an alternative approach to God, to each other, and to the crises that fill every life. On the day before his death, Jesus went to the Garden of Gethsemane to pray with his disciples. That's not all he did. Once you learn about the story of Mary Magdalene, I just had to add that in there. That's not all Yeshua did at Gethsemane. If you read the story of Mary Magdalene, he did a lot more than that. Let's keep on going. Jesus went to the Garden of Gethsemane to pray with his disciples. As the disciples fell into a deep sleep, Jesus prayed to God. Church people, I want you to listen to this, because we got it's probably going to be an hour and 20 minutes. Yep. It's going to be an hour and 20, at least. We'll see. But hey, are you loving it? Yes or no? It's your truth. You watch a whole movie full of nonsense, a whole episode of nonsense. Let's get your truth. Jesus embodied the power of choice during his lifetime, as recorded in the New Testament, challenging the tribal elders of his faith and offering the people an alternative approach to God, to each other, and to the crises that filled every life. On the day before his death, Jesus went to the Garden of Gethsemane, that's spelled Gethsemane, to pray with his disciples. As the disciples fell into a deep sleep, please listen to this, Jesus prayed to God, or better known as Abba. He said, Abba, Father of all things. Abba, Father, all things are possible to you. Remove this cup from me. Yet not what I will, but what you will. I'm going to read this again. On the day before his death, Jesus went to the Garden of Gethsemane to pray with his disciples. As the disciples fell into a deep sleep, Jesus prayed to God, and I quote, Abba, Father, all things are possible to you. Remove this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will. Quote, end quote. That can be found on Mark 14, chapter 14, verses 36. Listen to this, family. In that profound prayer, family, Jesus consciously chose to accept his fate. He relinquished his will not to the tribe, but to the will of God, in an act that symbolizes complete trust in divine reason. In agreeing to accept the inevitable of his death, the decision to crucify him that would be made the next day had in effect already been made between Jesus and God. The tribal mind as such was never a part of this decision, even though it may have seemed throughout this crucifixion that the people of the Roman and Palestinian tribes were responsible for Jesus' death. This is, church people, this is just a sample of the truth they did not tell you. Jesus already made a covenant with God. So our old tribal consciousness could not get in the way. It was a covenant made with God and man. That covenant became a spiritual unity. So anybody, let's keep on going. This is powerful. Church people, step your game up respectfully. If you're going to call this man your father and call him your savior, at least know his whole information. At least know that he had a daughter. At least know he had some kids. At least know that him and Mary were secret initiates in mystery schools. At least know that before you go out here and try to tell everybody else what's wrong with their life. In that profound prayer, family, Jesus consciously chose to accept his fate. He relinquished his will, not to the tribe, but to the will of God in an act that symbolizes complete trust in divine reason. That sounds so good, I just wanted to read it again. In that profound prayer that we just read, Jesus consciously chose to accept his fate. He relinquished his will, not to the tribe, but to the will of God in an act that symbolizes complete trust in divine reason. In agreeing to accept the inevitable of his death, the decision to crucify him that would be made the next day had in fact already been made between Jesus and God. The tribal mind, as such, was never a part of this decision, even though it may have seemed throughout this crucifixion that the people of the Roman and Palestinian tribes were responsible for Jesus' death. When Judas' role was a lot bigger than you guys think, believe it or not. And once you start reading books like the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus the Christ, you will learn. Judas wasn't just some betrayer. Judas had a role to play. Judas had a role to play, and he played that role. He knew he had a role to play. You know what? I'll let you do your own research on Judas. When Judas sold information about Jesus' whereabouts for 30 pieces of silver, the most famous act of betrayal in Western culture, he epitomized tribal power. Let's read that again. When Jesus, excuse me, when Judas sold information about Jesus' whereabouts for 30 pieces of silver, the most famous act of betrayal in Western culture, he epitomized tribal power, the use of money and physical force. During the trial that followed, Herod, and Pontius Pilate, these were the bosses, the pharaohs, the kings back in those days. Let me read that again. During the trial that followed, King Herod and Pontius Pilate could not make Jesus behave in any familiar tribal manner. Let me read this again because we're getting good. And look at what time we at. Let's keep on going. I'm not stopping. During the trial that followed, King Herod and Pontius Pilate could not make Jesus behave in any familiar tribal manner. He would not defend himself, scream that he was innocent, or attempt to bargain. Most significantly of all, he was not frightened or disoriented. They were, let's read that again. This is the power that Christ displayed. During the trial of Jesus, King Herod, Plotinus, they could not make Jesus behave in any familiar tribal manner. He would not defend himself. He wouldn't scream that he was innocent, or did he attempt to bargain. Most significantly of all, he was not frightened or disoriented. They were. He wasn't scared. They were. He was too calm. He had too much poise. Jesus informed the tribal elders confronting him that they had no power whatsoever over the events that were occurring. In every detail of his trial, Jesus responded in a way that baffled the tribe, illustrating for us that we have options in the face of even the most unjust circumstances. I hope you guys are reading this. In effect, all the events leading to Jesus' death were a celebration of the power of choice. My gosh, my gosh. In effect, my family watching, all the effects leading to Jesus' death were a celebration of the power of choice that his entire life had represented, especially when he chose to forgive his executors and did not cry out for vengeance. His greatest act of choice occurred shortly afterward, when he chose his own moment of death, saying, and I quote, "Father, unto you I commend my spirit. It is finished." Quote. Jesus' life and the Buddha's represent that we must all inevitably evolve beyond the tribal level of consciousness. I'm going to say this again, going in an hour. Jesus' life and the Buddha's represent that we must all inevitably evolve beyond the tribal level of consciousness from the perspective of Picean culture. Judas' act represents not a betrayal, but the closure of a relationship with an older level of consciousness. For those who don't know, I'm just going to go out and say it. People like Aaron, Moses, Jesus, Mary Magdalene, Joseph of Arimathea, who was really just a student who became an ADAP. Lazarus, when he raised up Lazarus. Judas now. These are all people who either knew about the ancient mystery schools or them themselves were initiates in the ancient mystery schools. You must know this. You must know this. That's why there is a esoteric knowledge to your exoteric knowledge. They did not want to tell you everything, and some of them could not tell you everything in church. Judas' act represents not a betrayal, family, but the closure of a relationship with the older level of consciousness, one that has become alien to Jesus. It has also become alien to us because now our consciousness is reaching higher vibrations. Let's keep on going. We're almost done. Let me see. We got. What y'all think? What y'all think? Should we stop here? Should we stop here or should we keep on going? Let's keep on going. Those who are going to watch are going to watch. Let's keep on going. Part of the message Jesus shows us is how to respond to the signal that we must seek a higher level of consciousness. Once again, part of the message Jesus shows us is how to respond to the signal that we must seek a higher level of consciousness. Surprise! That's what his mission was. By surrendering our will to God's will. In our own lives, when the time comes for us to move beyond an old way of thinking and to give up perceptions that no longer serve our growth, we frequently experience the signal to, and I quote, take up our bed and walk, end quote. As an act of betrayal, a Judas kiss. Let's read that again. We frequently experience the signal to take up our bed and walk as an act of betrayal, a Judas kiss. There we go. We may work for a company for many years. Family, listen up. We may work for a company for many years. For instance, believing that it will provide for us. I want to read this again because a lot of people feel like this. I know I have been there before. We may work for a company for many years. For instance, believing that it will provide for us in our retirement, only to become part of corporate downsizing during our middle years. Hit the like button if you've been through that before. We may work for a company for many years, for instance, believing that it will provide for us in our retirement, only to become part of a corporate downsizing during our middle years. We may marry and count on that partner to be with us through our lifetime. My gosh, hit the like button, family. Only to discover 20 years into the marriage that he or she has fallen in love with someone else. From an ordinary tribal point of the view, these are acts of betrayal. As long as we think of them as betrayals, we take years to recover from them, and we lose incalculable amounts of energy over them. Yet, if we can learn to view them symbolically, as in the chapters that follow, we will see that they are signaled to release the belief patterns of the tribal mind and evolve to the next level of consciousness. And that's what a lot of you, my brothers and sisters, are doing right now. Let's keep on reading. At the point when we are emerging from tribal consciousness, we are often, if not always, given the choice to take the wisdom path. Quote, end quote. All the signals tell us that the time has come to let go and move on with our lives. Those who heed the signals will be presented with their own challenges. But more often than not, because we fear change, most of us remain in the old and familiar places, clinging to situations and relationships that have essentially ended. You may, for example, experience a growing desire to leave your job, but even as this desire intensifies, you ignore it because you are unsure of where to go to next. You tell yourself that you would make the change if only you knew what lay ahead. Stop playing with me. You know you had these thoughts. If only you had something better lined up. As the tension within you mounts, you fight your desire with more and more self-created rationalizations. And I quote, you say, it's not the right time. Quote, end quote. You tell yourself, or my job situation is bound to improve if I only give it another chance. Hit the like button, family. Stop playing with me. We are all one. So I know you've been through these situations. And if you haven't, then you were raised right. And even if you wasn't raised right, even if you was raised right, you still been through these situations. Life can be a bitch. It's all about how you maneuver. Because even if you have been raised right, you still have your individual choices to make, and you still got to go out in the real world and live. So let's make sure we're on the same page with that one. But as the months pass, nothing changes except your mounting anger, not about your job, but at yourself for not having the courage to do anything about it. Then the next phase of life has no alternative but to manifest in the woe path, quote, end quote. It's not unlike the consequence of letting a decayed tooth go untreated because you can't face the minor pain and expense of having a cavity filled. Excuse me. You end up having to undergo a much more painful and costly procedure to replace the whole tooth. In the case of leaving your job, the consequences are likely to manifest as illness, usually a chronic condition such as constant headaches or ulcer, or what you perceive as a betrayal, like getting fired from the job. I want to read this again. You are going through this. You are now seeing the reasons why you're going through this. You are not dealing with certain things. You're not letting yourself be free. You are holding your blessings back. And when you do that, we talked about chakras in previous videos. When you do that, you block your chakras, which cause health issues. Then the next phase of life has no alternate but to manifest in the woe path. It's not unlike the consequences of letting a decayed tooth go untreated because you can't face the minor pain and expense of having a cavity filled. You end up having to undergo a much more painful and costly procedure to replace the whole tooth. In the case of leaving your job, the consequences are likely to manifest as illness, usually a chronic condition such as constant headaches or an ulcer, or what you perceive as a betrayal, like getting fired from the job. The fear of quitting a job or facing up to a deteriorating marriage is actually fear of taking charge of your own life. Did you know that? The fear of quitting a job or facing up to a deteriorating marriage is actually fear of taking charge of your own life, rather than accepting that the day has come to confront your fear. We all been there. And if you don't, you can learn hopefully how to maneuver through it with this presentation. Walk into your job. Hold on, let's read that again. The fear of quitting a job or facing up to a deteriorating marriage is actually fear of taking charge of your own life. Rather than accepting that the day has come to confront your fear, walk into your job and resign, most of us avoid the fear entirely until some experience forces us to look more closely at ourselves. You may, for instance, resist leaving a marriage that has become counterproductive and spiritually damaging, only to find that you or your spouse will do something like have an affair that participates in divorce. Woo! Guys, do you understand what this is saying, ladies and gentlemen? You will be stuck in a relationship where you end up doing some stuff like cheating on each other, where if you just left in the first place, if you just came together and said, you know what, this ain't going to work out. The other half of you is there, but my growth is more important, and your growth should be that more important. These conversations have to have, there must be conversations in the beginning before you start to begin a relationship. What are you looking for this relationship? What are you looking for the relationship? I mean, just sit down and have a dialogue before you just jump bones. I promise you, I'm speaking from experience. There should be a conversation before you even just engage. Let's keep on going. I'm going to read that again. It's probably going to be about 1:30, an hour and 30. The fear of quitting a job or facing up to a deteriorating marriage is actually fear of taking charge of your own life, rather than accepting that the day has come to confront your fear. Walk into your job and resign. Most of us avoid the fear entirely until some experience forces us to look more closely at ourselves. You may, for instance, resist leaving a marriage that has become counterproductive and spiritually damaging, only to find that you or your spouse will do something like have an affair that participates in a divorce, regardless of your attempts to halt the process. You may risk developing a debilitating or fatal disease should the stress become worse. This is why now you are knowing, listen, you are hearing what has been happening to you. What you think is the cause is actually the effect of you not knowing who you are. Or you may even be less, or you may even less, or you may be even less fortunate still and simply muddle through that area called a life of quiet desperation, leaving the difficult work undone and your spiritual and life potentially unrealized. When you experience an apparent act of betrayal, look closely to see if it may not actually be a divine invitation. Let me say this again. When you experience an apparent act of betrayal, my family out there, when you experience an apparent act of betrayal, my family watching, look closely next time to see if it may not actually be, I quote, a divine invitation, end quote, to let go of the old and discover the new. We will all have Judas experiences, and some of you have had Judas's experiences. But seen through the lens of a higher consciousness, family, they turn out to be powerful turning points in our lives that can introduce an entirely new form of power, the power of the individual self. From that point of view, the words of Jesus, and I quote, "Forgive them for they not know what they do," quote, end quote, are especially meaningful. Ponder the ponder the possibility that you may have already agreed in your own guarding of Jessamine, like Jesus did back then, to move forward, but you needed to push to get going. The people who may seem at the tribal level to be participating in the act of betrayal are in truth acting in agreement that you have already made with God. How then can you be angry at one of the Lord's messengers? Let's read that again. Because the church, people say, be careful who you are entertaining because you may be entertaining what? All right then. The people who may seem at the tribal level to be participating in the act of betrayal in your life are in truth acting out an agreement you have already made with God. How then can you be angry at one of the Lord's messengers? There is nothing for which you need to forgive them, for they have done nothing at all to harm you. For what you need, well, let's read that again. There is nothing for which you need to forgive them, for they have done nothing at all to harm you. Now think about that relationship you was in, family. My sisters, think about that relationship that you was in. My brothers, think about that relationship that you was in. Now, looking back now, I know you didn't want to leave it. I know you felt that connection. But think about where you at now. Think about how much you have grown. Think about where you were at in the stagnation in that relationship or at that job. And think where you at now, how much you leveled up. That's what this author is saying. That's what people like me and other people have been saying to you through the experience that we had. We had to go through this as well. It's an uncomfortable feeling, I know. But somewhere over the rainbow. I may have lost the page a little bit, but we're gonna. I got it right here. Got it right here. Both Jesus and Buddha were instrumental in giving form to the Picean face of God. Let's read that again. We're probably going to be done by around 1:35. This is probably been the longest presentation I did in quite some times. And I also feel it's going to be one of the greatest presentations I've done in all times. So, both Jesus and the Buddha were instrumental in giving form to the Picean face of God, allowing humanity to see more than the simplistic Lord they had come to know under Aries. Buddhism made compassion an extension of the divine wisdom within us. Buddhism made compassion an extension of the divine within us, and offered a path through which we could become a part of the tranquil nature of the universe, as above, so below. Jesus introduced a father figure whose personality, quote unquote, is the essence of the fourth chakra, the heart center of the body, loving, forgiving, and caring. Jesus introduced a father figure whose personality is the essence of the fourth chakra, the heart center of the body, loving, forgiving, and caring. Whether you make this journey through Buddhism, Christianity, or another religion, or none at all, is irrelevant. Each of us will eventually be led to a path of eternal development that awaken us to our misconceptions and provide us with the opportunity to utilize the individual power of choice. Beware that this, be aware that this awakening will probably clash with the power of the tribal mind. This is where you get your black sheets from. Be aware that this awakening will probably clash with the power of the tribal mind, both within and around you. Since the tribe does not encourage independence and individual consciousness. Remember, just a few minutes ago, when Jesus prayed to Abba, Father, that was a covenant he made between only him and God. The tribal consciousness had nothing to do with that. So forget what your family said about what you can and can't not do. You know what you can do. Stop depending on your family for your blessings. Everything leads to God. God first. Seek ye first the kingdom, and all righteousness will be added unto you. That's the sequence. Seek first the kingdom. Whether you make this journey through Buddhism, Christianity, another religion, or none at all is irrelevant. Each of us will eventually be led to a path of eternal development that awakens us to our misconceptions and provide us with opportunities to utilize the individual power of choice. Be aware that this awakening will probably clash with the power of the tribal mind, both within and around you, since the tribe does not encourage independence and individual consciousness. That's why you got so much beef with your family. They don't approve. You come on now, guys. If the fish swimming in opposite directions that symbolize Pisces stand for options and choice, they also imply polarity and confrontation. As Pisces gained momentum in the latter half of the second millennium, a tidal wave of revolutions swamped the planet. Tribal authority was challenged by those speaking on behalf of the rights of individuals. Entire nations were born, the United States among them, with visions of becoming safe harbors for individuals seeking freedom of political and religious expression. Isn't that funny what I just said about the United States and where we're at now in 2025? I'm going to read that again. Entire nations were born, the United States among them, This was the vision of the United States, of becoming a safe harbor for individuals seeking freedom of political and religious expression. Interesting. As Pisces was entering its final 2 centuries, the Industrial Revolution dawned, bringing with it the belief that any individual self could become wealthy, challenging the long held tribal belief that one had to be born to power and wealth. Quote, end quote. The influence of Pisces has directed humanity to develop the power associated with the fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh chakras. Let's read that again. The influence of Pisces has directed humanity to develop the power associated with the fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh chakras. Whereas the power of Aries is tribal and externally focused in alignment with the energy of our first 3 chakras. Pisces energy is directed toward our internal selves, our internal selves, our internal selves. Chakras 4 through 7 are calibrated to Piscean energy. Chakras 4 through 7 are calibrated to Piscean energy. The heart, will, and choice, the mind, and spiritual life. Prior to the Piscean age, the energies associated with the 4 highest chakras were dominated by the power of the lower 3. Prior to the Piscean age, the energies associated with the 4 highest chakras were dominated by the power of the lower 3. Now, as the Piscean age comes to a close, I told you guys, pack your bags. We're fitting to get out of here. We're going to the Aquarian age. That's why this presentation is so long, too. Now, as the Piscean age comes to a close, the higher chakras functions as a perceptional system independent of the tribal mind. Let's read that again. Now, as the Piscean age comes to a close, the higher chakras function as a perceptual system independent of the tribal mind. Totally cut off the tribal mind. Ultimately, our tribal and individual perceptual abilities are meant to work in harmony with each other. Still, great pain and conflict can be generated when the needs of the heart are at odds with the needs of the group with whom we share a bond. We see this all over the governments. We see it all over the governments, the world powers. We see it all over. We're still having that conflict, but it's about to end. It has to end because we are now entering the Aquarian age, where the Aquarian age is not going to play that mess. Just like it cut off the tribal, it's going to cut off anything that is trying to destabilize the growth of humanity into their true multidimensional state. And guys, it's a wrap. We're about to wrap this up right now. And after this page, so going on 130 minutes, I want to thank each and every one of you. You are the reason why we're about to have over 1,000 followers. You're the reason why this university is popping like it's popping. Give yourself credit as well. And I thank you for being my brothers and sisters. So we're about to wrap this up. This was the Piscean age. This is probably one of the greatest field trips you had since riding with Mrs. Frizzle back in the Matter School bus days. I'm her son. For shizzle my nizzle, I'm the son of Mrs. Frizzle. Let's finish this off. Many people have shared with me, the author says, their anguish about leaving the religion in which they grew up. I know that's right. To follow a more fulfilling spiritual path. Let's read that again. Many people have shared with me, the author says, their anguish about leaving the religion in which they grew up to follow a more fulfilling spiritual path. The response from their families is almost always criticism and fear. You too, right? When you talk about your spiritual stuff, man, I'm praying. It's Jesus over everything over here, or it's Prophet Muhammad, peace be to him, over here, or whoever they worship. If they don't worship nobody, leave that crap over there, is what your family would say, because they are so used and comfortable into what they have been taught and what they have been doctrined and what they have been fed since birth, that they're not going to challenge their religion. And that's their choice. Whether you think you're wrong or right, you're right. Remember that. So let's keep on going. Many people have shared with me, the author says, their anguish about leaving the religion in which they grew up to follow a more fulfilling spiritual path. The response from their families is almost always criticism and fear, frequently with the warning that the person is falling under the influence of a cult. Church people, you have done this to all of your family members. You have driven a lot of your family members away. Whether it was to rebellion, whether it's to different sexual orientations, you did that. You did that. You drove them away. It's hard to say. It is what it is. Now, do they have their own choice? Damn right they do. But think about church people. Think about the people you have pushed away for not understanding your role as a messenger of Christ. Think about that. The response from their families is always criticism and fear, frequently with the warning that the person is falling under the influence of a cult. One woman told me that when she fell in love with a man of another race, oh my God, hit the like button for all my interracial relationships right there. Oh my God. Have you ever had to deal with that with your family? Don't you be bringing no white girl up in this house. Or, Becky, you know we don't do niggers in this house. We don't do niggers. Somebody has dealt with that. But anyway, one woman told me that when she fell in love with a man of another race, remind me of Othello. One woman told me that when she fell in love with a man of another race and moved in with him, her family cut off contact with her. To my Caucasian sisters out there, have that ever happened to y'all? Even to my black sisters who crossed the fence on the other side, respectfully. Did your family cut you off? Hit the like button. You're learning some things here now. One woman told me that when she fell in love with a man of another race and moved in with him, her family cut off contact with her completely. They were so ashamed of her choice of partner that they did not want their friends to know what she had done. And it was easier for them to shun her than to explain her actions to the tribe. To my LGBT family out there, y'all went through this too, or excuse me, y'all go through this too, or at least have been going through it. When you try to tell your family that you're gay or you're lesbian, and the backlash you got from that, it's all the same thing. So let's keep on reading. I'm gonna bring it back one more time. One woman told me that when she fell in love with a man of another race and moved in with him, her family cut off contact with her completely. They were so ashamed of her choice of partner that they did not want their friends to know what she had done. And it was easier for them to shun her than to explain her actions to the tribe. Wow. Had she listened to the tribal elders, of course, the results for her individual self could have been disastrous, ranging from depression to any number of physical maladies. Author is saying if she had listened to her family, then she would have been worse off than if she agreed with them. Had she listened to the tribal elders, of course, the results for her individual self could have been disastrous, ranging from depression to any number of physical maladies, forms of emotional and mental anguish that correspond to the stress partners of the four highest chakras include depression and schizophrenia, the inability to forgive oneself and others, guilt over, and I quote, betraying, end quote, the tribe, and a variety of spiritual crises based on splitting from tribal traditions, including tribal religion. That would have been everything she would have went through if she agreed with them. The actual physical location of an illness does not necessarily indicate the chakra through which the body is losing power. Wow. Breast cancer does not always mean a disturbance of the fourth chakra. For example, for almost all illness, the main energy loss begins below the waist. We're talking about the solar plexus, I'm thinking. Quote, end quote. In the tribal, let me read that again. For almost all illnesses, the main energy loss begins, and I quote, below the waist. Quote, end quote. In the tribal arena, in the tribal arena, that initial energy loss may then trigger personal and emotional illness that are aligned to the fourth chakra. Perhaps the best indicator of the irrevocable shift from tribal to individual power can be seen in what happened in the United States during the Vietnam War. When a nation declares war upon another, the tribal assumption is that the entire nation will automatically follow that declaration. And with a few quirky minor defections, throw its full weight behind the war effort. Tribal elders rely on this level of loyalty, and when it works, it can be oppressive, as in the Allied efforts of World War II. But by the time the conflict in Vietnam had become a focal point of national attention, Picean energy had reached its zenith. Wow, can I say that again? But by the time the conflict in Vietnam had become a focal point of national attention, the Picean energy had reached its zenith. Wow. Just as a light bulb glows brightest before it burns out. Wow. Wow. I heard this about some elders as well. Wow. The time had come from the final expression of individual power before superseded by symbolic power. During the 1960s, the power of the individual was activated as never before, with hundreds of thousands of people challenging the tribe wars, and more significantly, refusing to recognize the North Vietnamese as enemies. Shout out to my hippies. Shout out to the Flower Childs. Shout out to Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali was a vocal point. I'm not fighting the Vietnamese. What the Vietnamese do with me? Y'all my enemies. Y'all, and I'm paraphrasing, but he was saying, I gotta fight people in my own country. When am I going to fight Vietnamese and Vietnam and fight these people? They ain't do nothing to me. That's what Muhammad Ali was saying. The hero, the legend. He also helped usher in the Aquarian Age. So let's give Muhammad Ali his props for ushering in and being one of the. Let's give all the hippies and the Flower Childs, and all the great musicians that came at that time. So let me read this again because we're done. We're done with this one. During the 1960s, the power of the individual was activated as never before, with hundreds of thousands of people challenging the tribe's war, and more significantly, refusing to recognize the North Vietnamese as enemies. Tribal power was significantly diminished with that action, and since that time, this nation has never again stood on secure tribal ground in regard to war. By the time of the Persian Gulf War, the U.S. government had to assure the public that the involvement in the war would result in virtually no loss of American lives and would have little economic cost. In other words, no sacrifice, quote, end quote, would be necessary to win. Today, our tribal elders are far more focused on maintaining peace than on sending our young men to fight a war. Far from being of political value to our leaders, war has become a potential liability. Yet our nations around the world are still divided internally in tribal warfare and brutal suppressions of individual civil rights and religious freedom. As Picean energy ignites its democratizing effects, we see this in the White House all the time. We see this with politicians. This is about to end, just like this presentation has. Donald J. Trump knows all this. If not, somebody sent him the presentation, but I'm sure he knows this. You have a responsibility to do as we approach the Aquarian Age. We all do. With things like TikTok, with things like social media, we are seeing this happening. You might have one world government that is trying to crucify a group of people, and us as a whole is not going for it. So the so-called powers that be are trying to strategize. The ones who are dying out is what I'm saying. The powers that be, the wicked ones who are dying out because they don't want to reach higher vibrations. They're on their last foot. They're trying to do everything they can to throw the people off their path, but it's not going to work. The people have now awoken. It's just what it is. So with things like TikTok and social media, and I love looking on TikTok and seeing people who are just like me awakening in their higher vibrations. This is beautiful. So yeah, we are done. Field trips are over. I know it has been probably one of the longest field trips, but I know you had a great time. I'm about to go get me some eat. I'm about to go meditate. And I'm about to go medicate. So I want to thank y'all so much, my beautiful people, for making Cosmic Christ University one of the greatest universities of our times. I want to thank the 480-some folks that we have in here now. You are my family. You will always be my family. And if you ever need a place to come, you drop by the Cosmic Christ University, and the ordained minister will be right here with you. It's always a pleasure, family. Till next time.